so much for your invitation. I want to let you know, first of all, my deep love and affection for your minister, Dr. Russell Leaven. What a gracious soul. I think it's best illustrated by the story. We were at Aswusi, which is our camp. There was a man who was known to talk on and on and on in personal interactions. He was holding Russell and I hostage with his verbiage. As we walked away, I said, "You got to be careful about that guy, Russell. He'll talk your arm off." And Russell probably went, "I know." Oh my God! That's Russell. Beautiful, beautiful soul. I'm so happy that you and he have such a great relationship together, building a beautiful spiritual community here forward. There is not a day that goes by that I am not exceedingly grateful for humanism. There's not a day that goes by that everyone in this room, in this state, in this nation, and in this world have not benefited from the gifts of humanism. Humanism has helped to bring civilization, natural rights, to so many people. If it were not for humanism, we likely may not have had the end to slavery. We likely may not have had women's rights. Feminism, the right for women to vote. We may not have had workers' rights. Your children may be working in a factory this morning rather than across the street enjoying beautiful nature. In fact, you may not even be able to meet here in peace were it not for the gift of humanism. Civil rights may not have occurred. LGBT rights, and something that I know that's very emerging, important in this church, animal rights, and whether or not we choose to digest them through our bodies, but certainly the way they are treated. I'm sure we could keep going about the gift and the leaven of humanism, so beautifully stated by Mr. Jefferson. Granted to us, like nature and nature's God. It is endemic. It is in the very fabric of creation. It's not the right of a king, of a government, of a hierarchical religious structure to grant you rights. The dignity of every human soul. Now, as with everything, there can be a dark side. Beginning around the 80s, we had a full frontal attack on humanism, on liberalism. The root of the word liberal is what? To be free to have liberty. So with President Reagan here in the United States, Miss Thatcher in Great Britain, Pope John Paul II, the people like Reverend Falwell, Reverend Robertson, the moral majority in the United States, we have, since the 80s, had a full-on assault towards the gains of humanism, the gains of our natural rights, and the gains that we have stated heretofore. And even now in this state and across the nation, there is an absolute war on the bodies and the souls of women. Now, what any group would do, or any philosophy would do, is to push back against that eventually in a kind of a hard way. And so my experience and my observation is that humanism pushed against that kind of fundamentalist literalism, hierarchical power authority, with kind of, interestingly, kind of a liberalism of its own. So I grew up as a fundamentalist Christian. Eventually, over 25 years, evolved my way into a chaplain, a universalist, formerly a Unitarian Universalist. In the late 90s, when I first became a union minister, I remember going to a fellowship. How many of you have been to a fellowship? Many of you. Well, they're kind of renowned as groups that are not really into authority and let live, and that's great, and that's fine. But there was a certain hostility there. I noticed seemingly towards me. I thought, I was a pretty nice guy. We were at lunch. It was very interesting. And I just did this somewhat innocently and somewhat as a litmus test. I said that we were having lunch, and I said, what is the difference between a fellowship and a church in the UU nomenclature? And one of the men who looked like he'd been weaned on a sour pickle said, "We don't like ministers." And I said, does that mean I'm picking up my own tab today? And the church right, no, we've got it. We got the tab. And, I've regularly been accosted. I've preached all over this district, in churches small and large. Regularly been accosted as the congregants went out. If I said a word, a three-letter word that offended some literalist humanist, I think you know what that word is. There's even a four-letter word, J-E-H. That's fine. Five-letter word that upset somebody. In fact, it got so bad at my congregation, we were having liberal, open-minded, progressive Christians coming to my Live Oak church in Northwest Austin, and they'd come a few times and they would leave. And I began to inquire what is going on, and they would tell me about all the hostility they would hear. And so I had to have, come to English and talk with my church. And I said, we have two choices. The first one is to put on our sign, Unitarian Universalist except for Christianity, or we have the choice to heal from the wounds that have been inflicted upon us by literalistic Christians. And I gave a sermon and said, well, you, let Jesus resurrect. And I'm happy to say that that congregation chose the better path, the path less traveled, to heal. Now, as mentioned in the intro there, in 2004, after that election, in which the voices of literalistic fundamentalist Christians were so strong in re-electing Mr. Bush, I heard a call. I heard a voice. And it said, Chuck, you know how to get out there and preach. You know how to get out there and integrate liberal religion into what it means for our culture, for our politics, for the way that we organize ourselves. And I answered that call. I began with my radio show. I totally revamped my radio show to be a voice of liberal religion, and how you can have a religion of integrity that isn't about using religion as a bludgeon to discriminate against people, put people down, make laws, put people in tough positions. But once again, I blogged on major blogs, the Washington Post, the Huffington Post. I found that there was a divide. I'd write my blog. I was always careful to explicitly work from a religious perspective, and then show how that can still make sense today in our modern world. I would invariably get two kinds of comments. One is, I don't believe in fairy tales. I don't believe in fairy tale beings. I don't believe in all these people of the past who wrote these things. And the other one what I get was, oh, well, you don't really believe because you're not saying Jesus Christ is the only way, the only Savior. It was pretty much. Occasionally I'd get, not bad. So kind of what's happened, and I think it's breaking down now, but you kind of have this bifurcation of, on one side, you have like the literalistic fundamentalist religionists, and it's not just Christianity, because we see what's happened in Islam. And then what happened was a kind of a fundamentalist, literalistic humanism. Now, this was best, I think, articulated, this over here, by Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, who basically took a literalistic view, a literalistic, humanistic view, to counter this. Well, one literalism is not, you haven't moved a whole lot. You're still in a literalism, a fundamentalism. To the extent where, those men were saying that churches like ours should get out of the religion business because we legitimize religion. And that by legitimizing religion, we leave an open berth for those who would use religion as a way to put people down. But my response to that was and is, if those of us who are willing to integrate humanism and common sense and human decency into our religious perspective, if we abandon the enterprise of religion, who is it left for? It's only left for those who would articulate Have you ever heard of Camille Paglia? She is a professor, an artist, a very vociferous critic. I like to listen to the radio show On Point at WBUR in Boston. Anybody ever listen to that? I would encourage you. It's excellent. Get on your podcast. But I heard a wonderful interview with Camille Paglia the other day. She has a new book out called Glittering Images, where she's critiquing particularly art. That art has fallen into this literalism. But she was very striking, where she said, secular humanism has hit a dead end. It has become an adolescent, juvenile enterprise that has no depth at all, has nothing to offer the world. So I want to offer a third way. And this is what I would say is the definition of liberal religion. That liberal religion, of which we are a part, is a dynamic, active conversation between the ancient, religious, philosophical traditions of humanity and the evolving human consciousness. It's not one or the other. There is an active conversation that is going on, and I believe that we, as Unitarian Universalists, are strategically placed to bridge this divide. To have this active conversation between the ancient traditions of humanity, the primal aspects of who we are as human beings. There's some really good stuff in there. There's some really atrocious stuff in there. But through evolving human consciousness and knowledge, we are able to call out of that tribal and empire revelation the best of it. What Christianity would call the fruit of the Spirit, what Buddhism would call the noble truths, and I could go on and on. In this way, I believe we can offer a middle way, a voice of integrity. I believe it's vitally important that we do that. I believe it's vitally important that we frame ourselves as religious people. One of the things Camille Paglia said is that, in her estimation, that current, what she called, and she said, I am an atheist, I am a secular humanist. But those who deny the power of religion and spirituality are on a fool's errand. You think about Joseph Campbell and the whole thing of the power of myth and the power of metaphor. That's what we're talking about. Human being, once again, Mr. Emerson, it's in our book. Human beings will worship something. Let's engage with an evolutionary 21st century faith. And you and I, and Unitarian Universalist churches, are poised enough, are mature enough, are centered enough, and grounded enough to do that. Now I'm just going to briefly mention that's what we're trying to do with our Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry in the state of Texas. Now, there's some of these out there on the table out there. We are trying, along with other people of good faith in Texas, and there are a lot of them, to do this very thing, to say you can be a person of faith, a person of integrity, that doesn't have to check their mind and their hearts and their compassion and their better angels at the door, but are articulating spirituality, of compassion, of openness, of expansiveness for all people. Have you ever heard of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel? I want you to know who he is. He's a beautiful soul. Rabbi was up in his study, theological professor. He came out of his tower to walk arm in arm with Reverend King on the line there. Civil rights. Google him today. Go to Google. He looks just like Moses. If you have an image of Moses, he's got this great beard. He's got that Jewish look about it. But Rabbi Heschel said that religion at its core, that all religion at its core is about radical amazement. And then we have in our tradition the great humanist minister named Curtis Reese back in the 40s and 50s. He said that humanism at its best is about radical goodwill. Just think about it. You and I have a great gift to offer this world, this city, this state. Radical amazement and radical goodwill coming together in that middle way to create a world of justice, of compassion, of equal rights and dignity for every being, including our blessed Mother Earth. Amen. So as we rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 90, From All the Fret and Fever